Wouldn't it be cool if you could sign into your Tailnet without a password ever again? Well, that's the promise of passkeys, and I'm going to show you in today's video how to set up PocketID, which is a custom OIDC provider, to enable just that. So watch this. I'm going to sign into my Tailnet here using the name bill@initechlabs.dev, and initechlabs.dev is a domain name that I own, by the way. I'm going to click sign in. Now, no hands, no usernames, no passwords, no autofill or anything like that. And you can see on the screen that I've been taken to id.initechlabs.dev as a PocketID sign-in page. So when I click sign in, it's going to prompt me for a passkey. I'm going to click on Bill. I'm then going to present my digit with my fingerprint right here. And I'm going to be logged into Tailscale. It's as simple as that. So if you want to find out how to do that, that's what today's video is all about. PocketID, custom OIDC providers, and Tailscale. There are chapter markers down below because there are quite a lot of small little things that we need to get in place for today. And just to save you a bit of time, you know, if you've already got a domain name, for example, and you've already got DNS set up, you can just skip that section of the video that's not relevant to you. But in case you're coming at this completely fresh, I'm going to go through this in a fairly linear order. And again, you can use the chapter markers to kind of find the bit of the video that makes the most sense to you. So if you're brand new to Tailscale, or you're just creating a brand new Tailnet for this purpose, head on over to tailscale.com and click on the Get Started, It's Free button. This is going to give you an option to sign up with a whole bunch of different identity providers. And the one that we are interested in today is this one at the bottom, sign up with an OIDC. We need a domain name at this point. Now, I hope you have one. If you don't, you can head over to somewhere like, I don't know, Porkbun or Namecheap, or even Cloudflare sell domains. But personally, I like to separate the registration of a domain from where its name servers are pointed to, from where the DNS lives. You can find domain names, typically even .com domain names, if you're willing to go long enough, for $10, $12 a year, something like that. If you're willing to go with a slightly more esoteric TLD, and a TLD means the top level domain bit at the end. If you're willing to go with a slightly more esoteric TLD, you can get them for a couple of dollars a year. So owning your own domain name hopefully shouldn't be an impediment to proceeding beyond this point. Once you've purchased your domain, you can see I've got a few registered here under my Porkbun account. You're going to want to configure the name servers for that domain to point to somewhere that you can control. In my case, I use Cloudflare. So we're going to use the domain name of initechlabs.dev. When adding a new domain to Cloudflare, you click the add button up here, connect a domain, and it will walk you through the process and give you a couple of name servers that are specific to your Cloudflare account. That information typically lives down the bottom here, Cloudflare name server. So in my case, I've got Milani and Stephen. I then plug that information back into Porkbun. So if I go to initechlabs.dev and go to details, you can see that I've got these options here for my name servers, and I can edit them by clicking this button right here. By default, Porkbun will give you some default name servers that won't point to Cloudflare. And so once you've done that, you are pretty much done in terms of setting up the raw mechanics of what's needed for your personal domain side of things. The next thing we need to do is actually get PocketID spun up. Now I'm going to run PocketID today in a DigitalOcean droplet. And the reason for this is because the service needs to be exposed to the public internet. You can secure it however you like. I'm going to put mine behind a reverse proxy, and we'll cover all that in the video, don't worry. But I'm going to spin this up, like I say, on DigitalOcean. You can use Hetzner or Linode or Vultr or AWS or GCP if you want to. Doesn't really matter. So long as you get PocketID running as a publicly facing service, I don't really care how you get there. But if you're going to follow along this tutorial verbatim, let's just create a brand new droplet. The reason I pick DO after all this time really is I have no affiliation to them, and neither does Tailscale, but they're just cheap. It's like $4, $5, $6 a month, something like that for the basic one. You can click on general purpose here. Nope, basic. Regular, that's it. $6 a month is the cheapest option. Like I say, Hetzner have some cheap ones, Linode too. Lots of options in this space, and I'm going to call this one TS PocketID. Okay, and once that's done, we're going to create the droplets. Now this takes 30 seconds or so, really not that long. Once the droplet's created, we'll go and SSH into it and set things up, some of the basics. So SSH root at, and then the IP address of the remote system. So the first command we're going to run is apt update. This updates the local mirrors, a local copy of the mirrors. So basically Ubuntu can build a delta between what's available upstream from Ubuntu and what's on my local system, and tell me that I've got 160 packages to upgrade to bring this image up to date. Next, I'm going to type apt upgrade. This is going to upgrade the fresh Ubuntu image from DigitalOcean. And ooh, look at that. That must be apt 3.0. I haven't seen that before. Wow, that looks nice. But anyway, you can see there's 160 odd packages getting upgraded. You can see disk usage, all that kind of stuff. It will take a couple of minutes, so I'll be right back. And with our packages now up to date, I'm going to go ahead. I have a little helper script that I just have hosted over at sh.ktz.me/lxc.sh. And you can see in here, there's just two commands. One is to install Docker. The other one is to install Tailscale. These are both the official commands from both of those projects. The helper script is just that. It's just a helper. So if you want to pipe that to Bash and make your life easy, you can. Don't run random code off the internet unless you're the one hosting it, which in my case is me. So it's all good. So this will get Tailscale installed onto this machine as well as Docker. We're going to use Docker to run PocketID today, and obviously Tailscale. I've got to install Tailscale, right? That's just part of the deal here. But it will make our SSH access to this server much easier going forward, and we can enforce things like grants and ACLs and basically fence this off from the rest of our Tailnet and make it like a really secure enclave. We don't want just anybody to have access to where our identity stuff is living, right? So once that's done, we're going to go ahead and reboot the droplet and then connect it to Tailscale and spin up the PocketID Docker. So now that's done, it's time to connect this droplet to my Tailnet. So I'm going to do my standard Tailscale up --SSH so that I can use Tailscale SSH instead of having to worry about usernames and passwords and SSH keys onto this system anymore. Which Tailnet should I put this onto? Catch-22 time. Let's actually leave this till later in the video, and I'm going to add this to the new Tailnet that we're going to create so that this node becomes part of, rather than my typical demo Tailnet of tailandscales@gmail.com, this is going to become part of our new initechlabs.dev Tailnet. All right, very good. So let's reboot this node now and pick up the latest kernel if there was any changes, and just make sure the node is a completely fresh slate for us to build upon. So our reboot was successful. Our node is back now. In the description down below, there'll be a link to a GitHub snippet where I have all of this code available. This is what we're going to need to spin up PocketID behind a reverse proxy that configures our TLS certificates for us. So we're going to run PocketID on id.initechlabs.dev. But in order for this traffic container to be able to make the DNS challenges for us in Cloudflare, we are going to have to set up a token in Cloudflare. So head over back to your Cloudflare dashboard, click on Profile. Oh, you can see I've actually already got an Initech Labs DNS challenge one right here. So let's just see what the summary of this is. I've got zone read and DNS edit. So let's just create a new one just so that this tutorial is fully complete. So I'm going to click on Get Started, and then I'm going to give it Initech Labs Pocket ID, I guess. And then what did we have? Zone read. So zone, and then I want to be able to read the settings for this zone. And then also under DNS, I need to be able to edit the DNS settings for, I assume, this zone as well. Yeah, there we go. Zone DNS edit. And I don't want to include all of the zones from this specific Cloudflare account. I want to limit it to just this one. So initechlabs.dev, and there we go. I'm going to get myself a nice shiny new token, which I'll copy to my clipboard, and I'll put into my VS Code file right here. And now traffic will be able to get us a TLS certificate from Let's Encrypt for this domain. So what do we do with this file? Well, typically I would use the Tailscale SSH extension built into VS Code to copy the file around. But as I mentioned, we're in a bit of a chicken and egg situation here, getting out of the ground with a completely fresh Tailnet with our own hosted authentication provider. And this is one of the caveats you need to be aware of this entire solution is batteries are not included. If it goes wrong, it's kind of up to you. Whereas if Google's auth goes down, a lot of the internet goes down, and they'll probably fix it pretty quickly. But if your self-hosted IDP provider goes down, it's on you to fix it. So you own the data, but you also own the outages as well. Just, here be dragons. All right, so we have Docker running on this. This is the VPS again. Remember, this is the droplet. I'm going to create a file here called compose.yaml. I'm going to insert this entire contents of this file into that file. You can use nano, vim, whatever you want, and then do a docker compose pull. And this should pull down the latest PocketID and traffic images from Docker Hub. Shouldn't take too terribly long. Then once that's done, we'll do a docker compose up. Well, we'll do a -d, and then we'll follow that with a logs -f so that we can see what's going on in the background. And in theory, we should now be able to go to, wait, I forgot something really important. We need to actually configure the ID domain, the DNS part of it, right? So let's go into the zone, the initechlabs.dev DNS zone, and create an A record pointing at this specific container. So our public IP address is this. So I'll copy that from our droplet, and we're going to put this into, Cloudflare for ID, and then we'll put the IP address in here. So id.initechlabs.dev now points to 45. whatever. Click save. And now we should be able to go to id.initechlabs.dev in theory. And there you go. We've got PocketID spun up. Easy as that. So this login URL won't help us. We actually, on our first run, need to go to /setup and configure PocketID for the very first time. So let's do continue, and we are immediately logged in, which is a completely fresh instance. So all of the defaults are still completely box fresh. And click on add passkey. Now, it's going to give me a few options of where to store this. You can store this if you have a password manager installed into your browser session, like Bitwarden or 1Password or whatever. You can install the passkey there. You could install it into your Google Password Manager built into Chrome, your iCloud keychain, or a physical hardware device if you have like a YubiKey or something like that. Just for the ease of use, right now I'm going to use iCloud keychain because I can use Touch ID on my laptop right here as the authentication method for this. So iCloud keychain passkey. That's how I now authenticate myself with PocketID and Tailscale shortly. All right, so we have no users configured in here, though. I suppose technically we have the admin user configured out of the box. But what if we wanted something a little more real? Let's go to add user. I'm going to create this one as Bill Lumber. Is it Berg? Let's do that. We'll do bill@initechlabs.dev. Wait, username Bill. Bill@initechlabs.dev. Just for my simplicity, I will give it admin privileges, though I don't recommend necessarily giving this particular user admin privileges unless you need to. And then I'm going to click on save. And so we've successfully created the new user of Bill, but there's no passkey assigned to Bill, so we can't log in and authenticate as Bill. Again, a bit of a catch-22. And this whole self-hosted authentication world is full of them. So you've got to be really careful you don't lock yourself out of things, because it's a very easy thing to do, but such is life. Now, what we need to do is click on this three-dot menu here under the users section in PocketID and get a login code. This is a one-time thing, and it expires after 1 hour, so don't take too long to use this code. We'll now log out as admin, and now I'm going to go to that URL that was on my clipboard and sign in as Bill Lumberg. Next, I want to add another passkey. So we've got one passkey per account. I'm going to create a new one. You can save this. I want to save this another way. I don't want to use the Google Password Manager. I want to, again, use the iCloud keychain and use my Touch ID. There we go. An iCloud keychain password. So now I have a passkey assigned to the admin user for my PocketID instance, and also a passkey assigned to the Bill Lumberg user in my PocketID instance. Confused yet? Good. It's like I say, it's a bit of a minefield, but once you do it a couple of times and get your head around it, you should be fine. So just to check that took and everything works properly, let's log out as the Bill user and authenticate once more. And you see I'm given the option now to log in as either admin or Bill. And I'll authenticate using Touch ID, again with my finger. And I'm now logged in as Bill. Pretty easy, right? Okay, so what do we want to do? We want to go right the way back to the beginning now and find this nice little option that says sign up with OIDC. Remember this? All the way from the beginning? There's a phrase in consulting that I came across a few years ago called yak shaving. And this video is the definition of yak shaving. In order to set up a custom OIDC provider, we need a domain name, which means we need DNS, which means we need a place to run our PocketID instance on the public internet, which means you get the idea. Now, there's one more thing that we've got to do, which I'm going to deliberately make this fail in order to show you what's going to happen. So I'm going to put in bill@initechlabs.dev, and this is going to look for a piece of content to verify my ownership of the domain under .wellknown/webfinger. There isn't a way to do this automatically, but if I click on Get OIDC Issuer, you can see that it fails because there is no webfinger endpoint on that domain. Like, it doesn't exist. We haven't created a web server that's going to host that thing. So let's fix that. And we can do that pretty easily with a little Nginx container. So we're going to add this to our Docker Compose file. In fact, there's a bunch of cruft in here that we don't need. So let's just delete those lines. Obviously, what you find in the Git repo will have all of this removed already. But this is actually the code that I used to host those scripts I talked about earlier in the video on another DigitalOcean VPS, funnily enough. I'm just going to call this one webfinger because that's literally all it's going to do. And then app data path, well, I don't suppose it matters, but I'll just call it opt app data. And then webfinger, because we're going to need to create a file shortly to handle the contents of the webfinger request to prove that I own the domain. So I'm SSH'd back into the droplet here, and I'm going to make a directory with make dir -p opt app data webfinger, and then .wellknown. And that should be all it's looking for, right? I think. Yes, wellknown/webfinger. The file name is webfinger. So with that done, I'm now going to I'm going to cd into that directory, of course, and then .wellknown, and then create the file webfinger. And I'm going to put into it the following contents. And I'm going to update the subject with the email to be bill@initechlabs.dev. And the value of this issuer URL needs to match what is configured in your VS Code window earlier. So this id.initechlabs.dev, and we can include the HTTPS in there as well. So let's just take that value and paste that onto our clipboard, and we'll change to, so CT and then quote mark in Vim, and I'll replace that entire string with what we need right here. So now I just need to modify my Docker Compose file real quick. So edit compose.yaml and just add in that extra line for the Nginx service. So I'm going to delete everything and then just paste in the entire file, do a Docker Compose up -d, and it's going to pull down the latest Nginx image and run webfinger at, well, we didn't configure that yet. Again, we need to jump back to Cloudflare and add at the root of our domain, so we can use the @ symbol here. And we're going to put in 45.55.91.245, which is the address of our PocketID instance in DigitalOcean. And so now, in theory at least, if we go back to our sign up page for the OIDC side of things, we should be able to query the webfinger using Tailscale. And it worked. Okay, so the well-known stuff and the webfinger stuff is now good to go. But what we've got to do next is create the client ID and client secret. We're going to basically create Tailscale as an app inside of PocketID. So let's head back over to our PocketID instance, get authenticated as Bill Lumberg. Here we go. And next we want to configure an OIDC client. So on the left menu down here, click on OIDC clients. And this is why at the beginning, at least, it's important that Bill is an admin user, because you can configure these things in PocketID. But later on, you probably want to have a separate browser session or profile and manage these things separately from the user who you are authenticating as, just to, separate concerns, that kind of thing. But let's add an OIDC client. We want to do Tailscale right here. And let's look into Tailscale OIDC documentations for the callback URL. I should say, by the way, there's an entire page dedicated in our documentation to doing this. But, I know some people prefer a video, so that's why I'm making this. Here is the callback URL that we need. So let's paste this now into our OIDC clients page. And let's also just give this an extra little bit of spice. Let's go to dashboardicons.com and search for Tailscale. By the way, this is a fantastic resource. If you need icons for any of your self-hosted applications, for like a dashboard or whatever, this one's my favorite that exists on the internet. And now we're going to go and download the light theme PNG. Sure, why not? No, let's do dark theme PNG. I used to be indecisive, but I'm not so sure anymore. All right, let's upload the logo, and voila, we have the Tailscale logo. We have our callback URL. I'm going to click on save. And it's going to give me now a client ID. I'm going to go back to my first tab. I hope you're still with me. And paste in the client ID. And then get my client secret. And again, paste that in right here. And then don't worry about any of these prompts. Leave the default. Leave none. Leave login. Leave select. Just leave consent checked. And then click sign up with OIDC. And all being well and good, you just signed up for Tailscale with a custom OIDC provider. So you now own the authentication for this Tailnet completely. There's no third-party big tech involved in there at all. So personal use, let's just skip all of this stuff because I have used Tailscale before. And I'm going to add my first device up here. So just in the same way that you would add any other device, I'm going to go account settings, click on add account. It's going to take me into a browser to authenticate. I'm going to add the device Baldric to the Initech Labs Tailnet, and voila. You can see this device is now authenticated and owned by Bill at initechlabs.dev. There's a bunch of stuff you can configure on a brand new Tailnet, but that really is beyond the scope of today's video. One thing you might want to do is just select a plan if this is a brand new Tailnet. We do have pricing options available. Like if you want to bring Tailscale to work, you can go to tailscale.com/BTW to find out more about what all of these different pricing options will unlock for you. But our personal plan is very generous, 3 users and 100 devices for free. I'm going to click on I understand these terms and end my free enterprise trial, and click on choose personal plan. So under my machines page, I could now just treat this like any other Tailnet, except for the fact that I authenticate using PocketID. So let's just do that one more time because it's kind of exciting for me to do this still. And so I'm going to log out as Bill, but I also need to log out from PocketID as well, because remember, it shares the token between effectively multiple different tabs. So if I now go to tailscale.com and I click sign in with a passkey, you might be a little confused and think, this is how I sign in now, but actually no. You want to sign in with Bill at initechlabs.dev, click sign in, and now Tailscale knows that that's a custom OIDC provider Tailnet, so it's going to ask me to sign in with the callback URL and all that kind of stuff. Click on Bill, put my fingerprint in, and it's as easy as that. So again, lots of chapters down below. I know that was a super long, complicated exercise in Yak Shaving, but that's just the reality of setting up your own custom OIDC provider. That's why we provide several out-of-the-box OAuth providers from Google, Microsoft, Apple, GitHub, because this stuff is complicated. It can be difficult to set up your own infrastructure in a highly available way. And in fact, even PocketID itself isn't a highly available service. If that droplet goes down, I can't sign into my Tailnet anymore. So just make sure before you take this path, before you walk this path, you've fully understood all of the ramifications of hosting your own identity. I would hate for you to be locked out from your Tailnet simply because a droplet went down for some reason. So yeah, there's just a lot to it. There's a lot to consider. And I wanted to make this video really just to show you what's possible with these passkeys, because you can configure PocketID to work with a lot of self-hosted apps as well. In fact, I was just playing around with Karakeep the other day, and it was really playing around with that and hooking that up with OAuth that was the genesis and the seed of the idea of this video. If you want to self-host your own auth, go for it. Be my guest. I would absolutely love to hear from you in the comments down below if you've done that successfully too. But just be aware of the pitfalls. So you have been warned. And as always, thank you so much for watching. I've been Alex from Tailscale.